This is the second video for the Multiplicity project for three-dimensional design class. We've made our mold last time, we've cleaned up the clay, we've taken out our original, and this is the one that we did in the previous video. And this is one that we've had sticking around the classroom for a while. It's a little frog face with a hat. You can kind of see it, but you'll see it when we make the impressions. Now that we have a cleaner working area, and we've gotten rid of the plaster dust that's on the table because we don't want to get any of the plaster into the clay that we're going to hopefully be putting into the kiln to cook, because plaster will hold water, and if that plaster is trapped within the walls of your clay and it's in the kiln and it starts to heat up, that water is going to want to expand or escape, and it will have nowhere to go except to crack your piece or possibly cause a small explosion to burst your work into nothing but crumbles. So cleanliness is a good step to take when we're mixing or using plaster and clay at the same time to make sure that we don't get cross-contamination. So we start out with a small piece of clay that we've turned into a ball, and we can press into our mold. That's why they call it a press mold, because we're going to press the clay into it. And then what we got there is we can peel that off of the mold, and you can see the frog face come out there. You can see the eyes and the mouth. Probably a little bit of the hat. But we don't want all of this extra that's squeezed out to the rest of the surface area. So we're going to take a needle tool. If you didn't take a needle tool home, you can use a nail, a screw, a pencil, or even just a regular like sewing needle. Anything that has a point that you can cut in with and drag around to get rid of that part of the clay that you don't want in your press from the press mold. Okay, so there, we're going to take that one, set it aside. I had some pre-done so that we can speed up the video a little bit. We're going to take a bigger ball and do one of our shell and do the same thing. Take it and press in to our mold. Press in. I don't want it to be too thick on the back, so I'm going to do a little more pressing on this one. It tells me the ball is probably a little bit too big. You could have used a little less clay. But the one benefit of using too much clay to press in is that it usually makes it a little bit easier to pull out of the mold, which that just did there. So then we take our needle tool, we go around the outer edge of our cast or our press, and there. I don't know if the camera does it justice, but you can see all the veining and texture from the original shell that came through into that piece of clay. Okay, so we've got several pressings and we've got those set aside. Now we have a bigger ball of clay so that we can make a pinch pot. The size of your pinch pot depends upon the size of the objects that you're casting. So this shell is pretty big, so we're not going to use a lot of those. We're going to use more of the frog, which is smaller, so I don't have to make a gigantic pot. But I'm going to say a good idea for this is to close your fist and make a ball of clay about that big or smaller. You can see a lot of indentations and divots and all of that stuff, so if you're not able to wedge your clay properly for this project, because we don't have the right surfaces to work on, I understand. So let's do what we can to get all that air out, get those indentations out by using the palms of our hand. You can see where my hand is wet from holding the clay. I'm not using the outside of my palm, it's all on the inside. So I'm slapping the clay to compress it and also to form it at the same time to get it into a ball. You can see it's getting rounder. The surface is getting smoother, and it's almost at where we can start working with it for making a pinch pot. Alright, so we're going to call that one a ball already. Pretty close there to it. So I'm going to take it in one hand, place it in my palm, I'm going to use my thumb, I'm going to press into the center going all the way down. So you can see there's a hole where my thumb pressed. My hand on the bottom was holding the bottom up, so it's not pushing it all the way through, but it's meeting up towards where my palm is. I can then start to squeeze as I go around the form. And I'm trying to not get too thin on my wall, trying to keep it all the same thickness. Making sure that I get all the way towards the bottom and not neglecting this area here. Lots of times this will end up too thick on anybody's pinch pot when they're doing it for the first time. So I'm going to keep pinching, I'm going to keep turning, and as I feel that wall getting to a nice thickness of about maybe 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch thick at the most, I'll start bringing my fingers up higher. They're coming up higher on that form. Okay, but the wall is still staying around a good thickness. You can see it's opening up, it's getting larger, it's getting rounder. I'm going to come up a little bit higher and open up the mouth of that pinch pot a little bit more. And then I'm going to come back down to where my previous pass was with my pressings on the walls to get this thing to grow taller. You do know it's getting bigger each time you squeeze. And it's good to have clay that's a nice consistency of wetness as opposed to being super damp. If you have clay that's super damp, like some of you may have when you took it home, make sure to let it dry out just a little bit, like maybe a couple hours, but don't let it get too dry, because then you won't be able to do this. But if it's too wet, it'll just turn into slop because it's too loose and it'll start to fall down. It won't go vertical like we want it to. I'm going to clean up that lip just a little bit with my hand, but you can see it has taken form. Okay, so we've got not the best pot, but we're all doing this in our garages at home, so I understand. Okay, so we got that. Let's put that down. We're going to come back to our pressings that we just made, and we're going to take that needle tool, again either a needle tool or a nail, and we're going to take some slip. You can see this is really kind of runny clay. All you have to do is take a small ball of clay, let it soak in water overnight, and then give it a nice good mix the next morning. And then you have your slip, which will act as our glue. So I'm going to keep that right here. I'm going to take my needle tool on the pressing. I'm going to make several indentations going in, kind of cross-hatching pattern. What that's going to do, that's going to give tooth to the slip to help it grab and hold on. We're going to do that to both parts. We're going to take some slip with a paintbrush or our finger, and we're going to coat the back of our press from the press mold, and we're going to coat right there on our pinch pot, and we're going to press it on. I'm going to try and smooth out that edge where the two surfaces meet, but I don't want to interfere with the texture or the surface of the press mold, so be careful when you're handling these. Okay. Okay, so there, that one's going on. So we got one. And remember, the goal of this entire project is to have a play on the principle of design, rhythm. So we're going to take one of our clay shell impressions, do the same thing. We're going to make some scores, come back over to our pinch pot, make some scores on here as well, come back with our slip, I'm going to paint it on there, take some more slip, put it on the back of our pressing from the press mold, and then we're going to kind of align how we want it to on our pinch pot, and we're going to again press on those edges of the piece you're trying to attach to get it to blend in and stick, but not messing up the texture on the surface. Okay, so now we've got a frog and we've got a shell. If I come over next to that and put another frog, then we start to get pattern or alternating rhythm, and that is one of the types of rhythm that we're looking for. So you can do it that way, you can mix and match. You don't have to go in a logical order, but start to play with your placement on these as you go around your form. And develop that visual rhythm. That part is entirely up to you and how you place them. But remember to look back at the project and its objectives. We're trying to achieve the principle of rhythm. Take that, and we're going to press it on. Okay. You don't need to cover the entire surface of your pinch pot with the pressings. Just enough for you to feel like it's complete, and also to have that visual representation of rhythm. So there you go. You got frog, shell, frog. If you're going in sequence, you might have another shell. You could throw a hiccup in there and go frog, frog, shell, shell, and then the rest frogs. So you play with that part, that's up to you, but make sure you come back in, smooth around those edges a little bit. Let it sit and dry. Okay, thank you for watching this video.